Welcome everybody. This is Bailey and French, LinkedIn Live. We are also restreaming on YouTube and Facebook as well as LinkedIn. Welcome joining us here today. We have over 500 people registered already. We're hoping to have some great engagement. My name's Alex Bailey from Bailey and French, and I'm joined today by my co-founder, Joshua French. Josh, how are you doing?
I am super good. Thank you so much, Alex. Good to kind of connect with everyone out there as well. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. I'm so pleased that you're here, I haven't done one of these with you before, so this is quite fun for me because it's almost like it's just chatting to a friend with a huge audience and a wonderful topic. We're talking today about psychological flexibility, and before we kick off, I'd love to hear from all of our people who are joining us and all our viewers and friends, clients, connections. Can you write in the comments, where are you dialing in from today? Let us know where you are listening to us from. We're going to have some time to answer questions, so keep them coming all the way through. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, ideas about this huge topic, psychological flexibility. We are talking about this today because there's so much change going on in the world. We are facing, a year with so many elections. There's huge amounts of change going on in organizations as a result of lots of things happening across the world, and it really affects us as humans. We have this systems process mindset to deal with things efficiently, but really taking on board what's the human nature of that change, and how do we need to be for continuous waves of change when we know that this isn't going to stop. This is going to be the new future, and a future that's very different to the one that potentially we thought we might be anticipating. Even a few years ago, post-pandemic, we were having conversations about the future of work. And I know that from over those 3 years, this is very different to what we were imagining 3 years ago, wasn't it, Joshua?
Yeah, it's. I think all of us here can reflect on our own experience over the last few years, and consider perhaps how we're feeling right now. Some of us are dialing in from home, some of us are dialing in from our workplaces, and just get a sense of why is psychological flexibility, that's what we'll be exploring. Why is that so important to you right now? I mean, that's a good thing to make a personal connection with as we start to dive into it.
Yeah, and that personal connection is important, isn't it? Because when you work with organizations and your clients are big companies, you're always thinking about the collective, but actually that personal impact is at the core of it. Culture is us is who we are. It's everybody, and we need to think about the impact on us. So let's start with thinking about psychological flexibility. Why have we even got the word psychological in front of it? Flexibility is a word that we use in everyday language. Why are we thinking about it from a psychological perspective, do you think?
I think it's helpful for us to have a good sense of grounding of the understanding of how it connects to evidence basis. And at the same time, I think it's really useful to remember that there's so much similarity between psychological flexibility and just what we know as flexibility. It's how we experience our day-to-day life, our adaptability in the face of challenge, our ability to kind of make choices based on what's important to us, to balance the various demands that we're faced with, to be open, curious in the face of different things that come up in our day-to-day experience. So I think it's useful to be aware that even though it's got psychological flexibility and it's so much to kind of underpin what it is, it's also useful to remember it's so similar to flexibility in terms of our experience with our day-to-day life and work. So to try and demystify it a little bit.
Yeah, and that's it. Demystifying some of these terms and words is really helpful for people because we're cognitively overloaded all the time. We're always getting bombarded with messages at work and outside of work. So people want the simple go-to. How can I cope? How can I deal? How can I, with courage face into change and challenge? with strength. And so, you know, obviously you and I have both been working in the world of resilience and flourishing and thriving for many years. And it's an area that we've both worked in terms of quite in-depth evidence-based research around resilience. And I feel like flexibility is quite different to that, even though it's connected. I feel like, you know, really focusing in on the resilience work that we've done has really helped us think about change and how we manage ourselves through change in a positive way, as positively as possible, to be more robust and strong when challenge hits us. But I feel like psychological flexibility is something a lot more dynamic and a lot more kind of overarching, in the sense that rather than just being ready to kind of accept change as it happens, but really expecting it. And I'd love to hear from everyone listening in. It's great to see so many different locations across the world with all the people who are joining us here in this conversation today. But please join the conversation. Let us know what you think psychological flexibility means to you. So, you know, why do we need it right now? And I think that's the other question really to explore is, you know, if it's something more dynamic, if it's more than just being resilient to change, and it's actually expecting change and being prepared for it and managing it well, managing ourselves through it well. Why is that so important right now?
Yeah, and I think when we kind of look at the world that we are in the workplaces, everything that's bombarded to us from what's going on in our countries and other countries, we can realize that we live in quite a volatile world, and the future can seem quite uncertain. We don't know where the next challenge is exactly going to be, but what we do know is that we need to be able to connect with each other, but also have that connection to the best in ourselves, so that we can harness the resources that we've got, the strengths that we've got, and the just the best qualities in ourselves to be able to face the various challenges that are ahead of us. And we won't always know what the response is, what the kind of circumstances that we're going to be facing, but we do know that if we can bring our best selves to that and be open to connecting with the people around us, then we're going to be able to respond much more effectively. And that's what we can all do fantastic things to support ourselves with, but also the people that we work with, whether we see ourselves as leaders or not. We can all lead and role model for the people that we work with as well, to develop psychological flexibility together.
Yeah, and the together part is really important. I really want to talk about that as well, because there's something about having like a shared identity, like being part of a community and a network that's actually supporting each other through these difficult times. And I talk about these difficult times. It feels like things are very difficult at the moment across the world, but obviously things have, you know, it's not new. There's always been waves of change. It just simply feels very intense at the moment, and hoping that people are able to look after themselves through that. And I'd love to explore a bit about some of the words we use to describe psychological flexibility, because we do have a course on it, and we talk about things like acceptance. And I'm kind of toying with this idea of acceptance versus expectation. So accepting the change, accepting what's happening around us, being quite a core part of being flexible, is being able to just absorb and observe what's happening without adding too much judgment or assumption to that. And I think that's quite hard, isn't it? You know, as humans, our nature, our intuition, from our wisdom and our experience, is to add our depth of understanding to what we're seeing around us and to try and make sense of it. So to withhold that kind of judgment and still use that information is quite a skill. And I think it's a skill that we can develop through practice. But I think it's about that practice together, isn't it? I think, you know, this is where social learning for me is so strong, to be able to support each other. We've got some great questions and comments coming through. I don't know what you think about that kind of that ability to help accept what's happening to us, or happening to our organization or to our teams. I know there's a lot of change, reorganizations, restructures, even redundancies in organizations happening at the moment. Being able to hold ourselves open to accepting what's happening and not kind of fighting it or questioning it too much, but being able to go, okay, I can't influence or I can't control this, so I need to sit with it and understand what that's going to mean.
Yeah, definitely. There's that sense of being able to take a step back and make that decision to not respond or not react sometimes in the way that we naturally would. We might habitually respond, because often it's almost like an unlearning process that we need to do to be able to respond as effectively as we can to the situation. So taking that time to step back, be more detached, more observant, is a skill that we can all develop. It's not necessarily easy for us, but it is something that we can get better at over time, and of course support each other with as well.
And through that, through simple practice, and Caitlin added it in there in the comments, that having that failure opportunity is a learning opportunity, and lots of more people talk about that now, is that kind of celebrating that failure gloriously and being able to learn from it in a supportive environment with people that are our peers, that understand the challenges we face on a daily basis. That's going to be one of the best ways that we can actually practice it, through scenarios that are similar to the ones that we face every day. And I think some of that can be prepared for and can be developed. I'm looking at some of the other pieces as well about self, and how when we're being flexible, we don't want to just be wishy-washy and just be like, okay, well, we'll just do whatever anyone says. We have to have that core anchor, don't we, in knowing who we are and our values, and respecting those and staying true to them despite being flexible and adaptable. And that feels very, very important. And I'm questioning how much we really know ourselves, because I've changed so fundamentally since the pandemic over these last few years, out of my whole span of my life, which has been fairly long. That seems to be the most amount of change that I've been through in the last few years. And I feel like I've needed to kind of re-know myself. And I worry that, self-awareness happens at an early stage in a lot of leaders' development. And maybe they did it, 20 years ago. But actually, there's a re-knowing maybe that we need to think about. There's lots packed into there. What do you think, Joshua? I know you do a lot of work around this with our clients.
Yes. So what it brings up for me, first of all, is the journey that I've been on. And part of this, Alex, is from knowing you. And when we kind of met and we were setting up this Bailey and French, that we had some great conversations about our strengths and how we could collaborate with our strengths. And there was some realization with me, an acknowledgement of strengths that I didn't necessarily even know I had. For example, empathy. I just assumed at first that most people could tune in easily to each other's emotions. So for myself, there's 100% been a journey of getting to know and develop a finer understanding of my particular strengths. But then also, as you're saying, when we can get a deeper, richer understanding of what our values are, what's important to us, then that can help us so much in being able to adapt, be flexible, make wise choices, emotionally intelligent choices in the moment. But because of the many layers of beliefs and habits of thought that we have developed throughout our lives as we've grown up, that's not something that is necessarily easy for us to do. So it can take us time, exactly as you've said, to do some unlearning. And one of the best ways we can do this is create an environment for people where they feel safe to explore that with others. So they can be curious, whether it's in conversations around their personal developments. You can even link it into conversations around performance. But what do people stand for? What are their meanings? What drives them? What motivates them? And through those kind of conversations, we can then, over time, find that our workplaces can not just be places to do work, but also places that we can enrich our understanding of ourself. And that self-awareness is absolutely key to being able to be flexible to the various demands that we face.
It is, isn't it? And being able to do that and share that with others that we trust and open up and be authentic is, it's core to all of our work. And as you know, obviously I'm really passionate about the area of human strengths, but really coming to this space of what makes us human and understanding what our differentiators are is so much more important now than ever when we're competing with computers and AI, is for helping people really know who they are and what their differentiators are, and doing that on purpose, being human on purpose. And knowing exactly, as you said, in the moment, like who we are and what our strengths and that positivity of who we are. Because one of the things I've noticed in my career that I'm very honoured to have experienced is just that sense and feeling after working with groups of people. People are just wonderful. Humans have such positive intent. And yet we're torn apart in quite a toxic kind of sea of polarized views in lots of different ways at work and outside of work. And I just feel like we miss that beauty of human species that is so positive and so caring and so purposeful about our intent in this world. And for me, that identity part being shared is really critical, and I'm really influenced by the privilege of being part of a session last night with Meg Wheatley, who wrote Leadership of the New Science some time ago, and she's a fantastic author and psychologist I've been following my whole career. And she was talking about helping people find islands of sanity, so that connected and shared identity that brings belonging and closeness to people so that they do have the courage to continue doing the good work that they're doing. And I think that is a core part of flexibility too, is being able to know that you've got a safe environment, you've got safe conditions to try something new, you've got a pathway backwards. You know, as a kid, you would look at maybe a pathway into the woods, but you'd know that there's a pathway back to get back again. And it's that curiosity of wanting to know that you've got a safe route back. And that comes, I think, from having people who are like, yes, go, we'll support you, and we're here if it doesn't work, or we're here to catch you and bring it back to being safe, I think. And there's that safety, isn't there, that's so critical here.
Yeah, and there's a nice example. Was doing some work with a team recently, and they shared that the CEO had been so open and vulnerable in a town hall for the organization about the worst mistake he'd ever made, and that wonderful, but kind of showing vulnerability and courage, but demonstration and role modeling of what it means to kind of make a mistake, to fail, but actually to really get some great learning out of it. And yeah, so that's something that can really support that sense of safety, is when there's real clear demonstration of that from different leaders in an organization.
Yeah, I love that. It creates that safe pathway, doesn't it? And that ability to be able to fail. And we've got some great comments coming through here. Thank you so much, everyone, for throwing in your ideas and thoughts. We're working through them as we're talking, which is sometimes quite a skill in itself. We've had something come through from Dr. Nori Silvestro asking, are aspects of psychological flexibility, is it related to aspects of personality? That's a great question. Personality is obviously something I've studied, part of being my psychologist background, but it's really, I think that there may be a connection, but I guess I've kind of moved to this space of understanding people through their human strengths, which obviously is an aspect of character and personality, but a very positive a way of doing that. But for me, the belief is that our strengths are infinite, and I'm not wedded to any kind of model that has kind of polarized or what's the word, kind of opposites across different aspects. So I think it's more flexible than tied to personality. That's my personal perspective, just thinking about it. But if I reflected a bit more, I would probably have a bit of a more concrete answer. Have you got any ideas, Joshua?
Just thinking that I mean, all of us here will have a different propensity to naturally adapt to a situation. Some of us here will be particularly energized when there's a crisis, and we'll be able to kind of leap into action and bring in the various parts to help lead people, lead ourselves through that crisis. So yes, to some extent, I think flexibility is something that can be more of a unique natural strength for some, but for all of us, if we have a range of different strengths, skills, aspects of who we are that we can draw upon, then it's certainly something that's good for us all to develop, is that flexibility around how we draw upon those different aspects of ourselves. That's just what I'd add in. I think there's a bit of both. I think definitely there's some natural propensity around some people being more flexible or more resilient, perhaps. But all of us have the opportunity to develop that and get really, really skillful and effective at it.
Yeah, well, that's a brilliant answer. So I'm sitting there thinking, yes, absolutely, nodding to every single point you're saying. But you're right, it's that combination, isn't it? And we can all get to the same outcome, but using our unique, different set of strengths in our own personal way, and that's what makes it so kind of uniquely human. And I really want to get onto some of these questions we were posing before in the details, because I think I know that in this audience there's quite a senior experienced group of leaders, particularly who work in the people HR field too. I really want to think about it from the organizational perspective, to really think about those people who are considering what does psychological flexibility mean for our organization? Is there an opportunity here to help people develop that skill to be able to navigate what we know is going to be a continuous kind of change cycle, waves of change that we are experiencing now in this future workspace. And I think obviously leaders are the arms. I've always said this, they're the arms into our organizations. They're the ones that work with and through others. And so they're very critical people who've kind of taken on that mantle and that responsibility with purpose to do good in this world. And I do believe that lots of people take that step because they do want to influence and have an impact and a positive difference. And I think, well, if I was a leader here, I'd be sitting here thinking, well, what can I do to help my team or my teams in my department really build more psychological flexibility to be able to cope really positively with the amount of change that we're facing as an organization. And I've seen more organizations face change this year, big change, in a short space of time than I have in 25 years of my career. I've seen people going through all kinds of restructuring and reorgs and redundancies whilst managing the process themselves for the first time. Often HR normally go through that last, but after they've kind of managed the organization. But that's not been the case this year. There's been swathes of people cut from organizations. And how do we cope with that when we're experiencing personal impact and be flexible to accept? We've just talked about accept and expect, to balance the demands that we're experiencing as a leader. If something's impacting us, but we know that our team also need our influence, how do we take action? How do we keep functioning and keep moving forwards if the organization has things that need to get done, when we feel like stopping and just thinking and trying to expand the enormity of what's going on in our minds? How do we remain true to our values and still remain open to what's happening around us? But what does it mean for leaders? I think leaders must be very, very stressed right now. We know leaders are going through more than they ever have done, more challenged than ever. Is this the answer? Is this something that's going to really help people if we can build skills and flexibility, that it's going to really power those teams to handle and to deal with change differently? So I'll pose lots of questions there.
I think one of the things that we can really consider as leaders is how we create the space for people to have dialogue that really involves them in being able to input into aspects of the culture that we're operating within, so that And you can use kind of various different methods, virtual, face-to-face, to do this, but really inclusive spaces where people feel asked important questions, and that their voice, their answer, their opinions, their perspectives are really valued, and that there's the expectation and the encouragement that people will not wait for a manager or a leader to make decisions about things, but there's actually some empowerment there to take actions to support um, their the work around them, the team around them, to support themselves, and input into the constantly evolving culture that we're operating within. So I think it's definitely something for leaders to think about, is what are the kind of platforms for dialogue, for connection that we're creating, and how can we make them kind of build that bridge where it's not just kind of about the transactional work stuff, or about kind of what do we do at the weekend, what's our favorite football team doing, that kind of stuff, but kind of that bridge where we're all meaningfully connected into what we're talking about, because it's our culture and we are all contributing to that. And that kind of actions piece as well, people being able to take actions around it. I think that's a vital thing. And then also, just along with that, is considering the one-to-one conversations that we're having as well. How can we make sure that we are embedding these kind of meaningful questions and development of self-awareness using different approaches, whether it's coaching or however, to support that regular opportunity for people to develop their self-awareness as well.
Yeah. I like that kind of comparison between that two, kind of personal and the team focus. And I'm thinking about kind of coming back to that kind of human space, and what I've been researching around what it means to be human, and how over time we've kind of we learn to change our behavior based on past experience, and failures and learning, but also that humans have an incredible capacity to be able to anticipate what may come, and to actually adapt their behavior to future scenarios and possibilities. And I think that is just a real nugget. That's a different perspective on change. And I wonder whether leaders could actually spend more time anticipating and predicting change with their teams, and thinking ahead and being curious and innovative about how they can actually be part of the change, even increase the pace if it's something that needs to happen and needs to happen sooner for the benefit of everybody. Is being almost like in the control seat of that change actually helps people accept things, obviously, and helps people be more flexible. So I wonder whether there's opportunity in those one-to-ones and those team meetings for leaders and team managers to be thinking about, okay, this is our plan for the year, this is what we think we're going to be doing. Obviously, at the moment, I've seen from people's conversations and the work that we're doing, that changes on a daily basis. People's goals and plans set in January are nowhere near where they were supposed to be now. And so how do we have those conversations where we're reprioritizing and rebalancing demands and anticipating, okay, if this is how much has changed in the last quarter, what do we think is going to change in the next quarter? There's things that are hitting us from different angles every single day. And how are we coping with that? Are we switching off and turning the volume down on some of our media channels? Or are we actually tuning in and thinking and anticipating what's going to be the next thing, and how's it going to impact our organization? And taking that initiative and maybe being the ones that are actually driving and leading into change is a whole new kind of ball game, I think, for many organizations to think that their teams can do that. There's an awful lot of what I see kind of parent-child in it, in terms of people kind of, oh no, we have to create the full 100-slide PowerPoint deck, of why this change is happening and what's led to it and what's going to happen as a result. And we don't have time to be doing that all the time. We need to be, revving it up and really thinking about how can people be constantly thinking about what's going to change next. Let's expect it. Let's lead it. Let's really move into this and make it something that we can feel comfortable in.
Yeah, and really and celebrate the resources that we have and the challenges that we've already overcome. So it doesn't feel like we're gearing up for a change, for a challenge, and then that's been overcome. So then we think about the next one. But just that continual reflection and celebration and acknowledgement of what we're doing, where we're going, and the kind of the power of choosing the right questions to help people envisage that that kind of positive future that we're moving towards. Because I think one of the barriers can be a sort of impatience. It can be considering what's like, if we have this, let's say we're aiming to develop psychological safety within people across our organization. And then it feels like there we can do a strategic approach to doing that. And it's something that we can then measure back with in 6 months, and then that's done. But of course, these kind of qualities that we're aiming to develop, like psychological flexibility, emotional intelligence, all of these things, they're never going to be ticked off or checked off. It's always going to be something that we can accept and enjoy and find inspiring, the journey towards developing them, perhaps towards mastery, but without feeling like it's something that needs to be done by a certain date. So I think that can really help leaders within whole organizations to have that sense of this is an ongoing thing that we're developing. We've got our North Star, we've got our guiding mission, we've also got our focus towards continuing to develop those qualities that we know are going to be so valuable to all of us. So anyway, that just came to mind for me as well.
Yeah, and it you know, I love that point. You know, we're never done, right? And I constantly get reminded of that. You know, and I look at that journey, and sometimes it's wearing. You think, oh my goodness, you know, we're still not there. But you know, I think one of those points that you made that really resonated with me personally was that ability to kind of look back and celebrate on what we have achieved and what we have got through. And it really helps me when I'm facing something big. If someone says to me, yeah, but look what you've already done. You did this, you did this, you did this. You can nail this. And actually, I love it when my daughters say stuff like that, because they are like my little cheerleaders. They're fantastic. And that's just, you know, the power of those questions and those words and those statements when you need that bolstering, because people know you've got courage and they're like, no, come on, you can. And being able to do that, that was actually something that came out of some of my research with some women leaders at the end of last year, was this need to have someone else to go to you and say to you, you can absolutely do this. Why are you questioning it? It's just that confidence. Sometimes we have that self-esteem knock. For some reason, we don't think we can. And I don't think it's as extensive as imposter syndrome, but it's just a genuine, you know, ebb and flow of confidence throughout our lives when we think, oh gosh, I'm not feeling as strong as I was last week. This stuff's going on at home. This stuff's going on at work. And then another challenge comes. But yes, we can do it. And I think sometimes we just need that bolstering from people around us. And I really love that. But the barriers, you know, we know that time is a big issue. It's such a valuable commodity in organizations. And yes, impatience, urgency, pace, people want to make things change and change them quickly. And people can't always keep up with that. And that does mean that they're the victims, you know, in some of those change scenarios where they are really badly affected by change and don't recover easily. And that causes the organization more stress, right?
Yeah, well, it can create that kind of chronic fight or flight within individuals or across organizations. There was a lovely point in the chat about the idea of remembering that it's not just about kind of work, it connects to the whole of our lives. So we can see this as an opportunity for us to be able to develop that strength of character for ourselves and to support the people around us with, just as a real positive human action that we are needing to take, because that's going to help us all be best together. So regardless of kind of what the strategic priority is at any given time, or the business plan that we're following, just the general direction that we need to keep moving in is helping each other be stronger, being more collaborative, being more connected, so that we can all, in a collaborative way, move towards a better world for us to live in. And our organizations can really contribute to that, of course.
Yeah.
And just a point about the relationships as well, and you were saying that we can really support each other with this as well. If there's an unknown future ahead of us, those quality connections that we can develop within our organizations don't necessarily need to be our best friends, but those mutually energizing connections that can really help us build that. The word safety net came up, and I'm not sure that's quite the right phrase for it, but it's like a kind of resilient network throughout the organization that can adapt and flex as need be. So that flexibility is not just within individuals in their own sphere. We're all kind of one organism, you could almost say, as a metaphor, to consider how we're all connected and we can be flexible if we've got those quality connections. So and that could be one of the barriers, is that we don't necessarily always have a sense of connection in our organizations. There can be isolation, especially with working virtually, which so many of us do.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm thinking about all this connectedness, all these questions coming through, and I just want to pull a few pieces out, because we're getting into some really good nuggets here. And I keep using the word nuggets, I don't know why, but I think it's just a pause moment. So I want to come to Craig's point, about how can organizations address the challenge of leaders who model that rigid, power-based, title-based approaches to interacting with others? Because I think you're picking up on something, Craig, that I've noticed this year, and quite frankly, it scares me, because we work with a lot of organizations across the world, all industries, all markets, in private and public sector, and I'm seeing a trend happening where there's been so much of support and focus on people-centric approaches and strategies through the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic. And yet this year, 2024, I've seen leaders coming back to that command and control approach of almost 15 years ago for the first time in waves. And it's because they're being forced to make changes and decisions. And it's almost like there isn't the time to consider how to be more human. And I feel like it is a worrying trend that people are being pushed into moving forward on things because of there's no time, the pace is here, the world is changing too quickly for us to bring everyone with us perfectly. And it is worrying. And so how can we speak to those? I'm going to come back to a couple of things. I've got 2 points that I heard from Meg Wheatley last night, and I want to share them with you. She's got a new book out, and I'm going to be sharing it in the details because she is absolutely phenomenal, and I'm so privileged to be part of that conversation. But one of the things I think she said last night that speaks to this, Craig, is the power of the pause, is being able to pause and take that time, if someone is acting and behaving in a particular way, to just stand and hold that pause and that silence to reflect on what's happening and be that observer, that non-judgmental observer of what's going on around us. And then ask ourselves the question of whether or not I am the right person to be dealing with this. And I think that's a really critical point that comes back to what we were just discussing there, Joshua, about the power of kind of working together and working on with each other's strengths and complementary strengths. Is, are we able to deal with and cope with that? If something is triggering us and we're thinking, oh my goodness, I really don't like the way this change is being implemented, or the way that leader is speaking about this imperative or this priority in the organization, and creating a level of fear among the ones around them, am I the one that should be focusing on dealing with this? Or is there someone who's better placed? And I think that's a really clever question, because I think organizations are so intricate now, and then they are, although they're still hierarchical, there's still so much interplay between people and relationships in organizations, and that has power. And I think that power has more influence than we realize to be able to do that. That was one thing that I wanted to just pick up on, because I think, Craig, that really spoke to what I was learning from last night. And as I said, I'll put the link in to promote that book, because she's phenomenal. But there was another thing that someone asked about, is strategic thinking a luxury? It's back in the comments now. And I love that question, because it's exactly what I was talking about in terms of the goals and strategies set at the beginning of this year not being even relevant now because things are changing so quickly. Is strategic thinking a luxury? And wow, what a great question, because if we're being flexible to continuous demands and needs and changes all the time, is it just, short-term goal setting we should be thinking about the whole time? We know we can't. We know the right answer is absolutely we have to make sure that we are doing strategic thinking. But why and how? And this is the last comment I'm going to use from Meg from last night. But again, I think it's worth sharing in this context. She said that not everything that is noticed can be changed, but everything that is being changed has been noticed, and that we need to notice. And I thought that was really fascinating, because in the strategic thinking, we might be picking up on things that we need to notice that need to be changed. And unless we're taking the time to actually pause and reflect and think about that strategic focus, direction, purpose, and meaning, we're going to really struggle to know what that direction is. And I think it's maybe even more important than it was before, but I think we need to be able to defend it and talk about why it's important and not a luxury. I think that's probably more the point, is that when there's a question about should we be taking 2 days out with the leadership team to be talking strategy, actually the conversation is 100%, because we need that. We need that direction, we need that purpose, we need the shared identity, we need to share our focuses together and get our language on the same page so that we can align the organisation. So just those 2 key points I wanted to share, because I thought they were just so insightful from someone who's worked in the leadership sphere for such a long time.
I love that. And as you were talking, kind of something emerged for me. It's that idea of where the attention goes, the energy can flow and build momentum. So just back to the point of how you address that kind of command and control style of leadership, which we're not really looking for in our organizations so much, is by remembering that over time, the culture of leadership is something that can organically change, and all of us, whether we are in a leadership role or not, but all of us have input into that, because of the way we follow, the way we respond, the way we advocate for those around us who are being really positive forces for creating safe, connected spaces around. So that, again, it's that kind of patience thing. Over time, keep putting the attention onto and building the kind of energy where the good stuff's happening. Over time, that can shift our leadership culture within organizations. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in. But
yeah, it's really powerful, and there's a lot coming up here. So as I said, there's lots of questions and comments. We'll come back to all of those for sure afterwards. We'll make sure we engage on all the questions specifically, because I think this is a really powerful conversation. And just before we kind of come on to the last section, I just want to share with you, I think Mike has done a QR code for our SiteFlex workshop we've just developed. One of our newest in our catalogue available. So if there's anyone here that wants to trial and pilot on our latest skill development workshop in psychological flexibility in your organisation, it's designed to be for a mixture of anybody. So it could be a leadership population or a team or a mixed group across an organisation. The QR code and I think the link that's coming into the comments is available for you to see that content directly. And if you're interested in finding out more about your organisation, trialing that, then please do get in touch with us. We'd love to be working with you. I think in terms of all the topics we've talked about today, I think we knew coming into this conversation, Joshua, didn't we, that there was going to be a huge amount of content, and it could literally be a whole series on all the different aspects of psychological flexibility, because I think it is a big one. I think, we've worked in psych safety, we've worked in psychological capital, we've worked in lots of different areas over the years, but this one feels to me like more timely, more important, more poignant for everybody, not just on a personal but on an organizational and a team level than ever before. And I think we need to support people and organizations to cope with what's going on in the world. And it feels more like a human need than anything else. And that's where, a lot of our work is heading in that direction around what it means to be human, really focusing on our human differentiators from tech and AI, and making sure that we feel comfortable as humans, and that we are breaking out of our bubbles, and that we are listening to and observing a bigger world, not just the one that's fed to us by our devices. But we are, bold and strong and courageous together, and creating, as Meg says, these islands of sanity for us to feel supported, the shared identity, the belonging in networks and communities that are doing good and do want to do good for people and planet, and everything that that this world supports us to be the best of. And I think we can. We can all solve this, and I think we can together, but we need to take the steps in the right direction to ensure that organizations which have the biggest impact on our human planet have the opportunity to have those people in the right places to make good decisions. So there's a lot in there. Coming up to the close, Joshua, I've absolutely adored having this conversation with you. I could talk to you for hours, I know we can. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to everybody today, and thank you everyone for joining us. Josh, do you want to sum up where you're at right now? What are you thinking at the end of this conversation?
Oh, I've loved it as well. And yeah, the thing that's coming up for me is like a little call to action for each of us. Why don't we consider for the rest of this day, or perhaps this week, what's something that we might be able to explore and try out? Maybe do something a bit differently, respond differently to how we might normally, or support someone else too as well. So just a little thing to consider, how we might bring more flexibility into our day or coming week as well. So let's all do this together. And but it's been great to connect with you all. Thanks so much for the input and the questions.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, really great engagement, and hopefully we'll be sharing this on our Spotify channel as a podcast, as well as sharing the recording on our YouTube, Facebook, and here on our LinkedIn. So please do share it broadly and widely. We'd love to talk to you about psychological flexibility in your organisation. Please do stay in touch. We love running these sessions every month. And we're moving and heading into a human species series through the rest of the summer and into the fall this year. So stay tuned, stay connected on our newsletter. We've got one on LinkedIn. We've also got one that we email out to. That's got all our events, updates, and offers, as well as packed full of evidence-based research in our articles and blogs that we use with our clients. So please do stay connected with us. They are challenging times, but we can do this together. And I love your call to action, Joshua, to excite people to think and explore about what they can do, because really that's part of anticipating change, isn't it? And predicting and being able to think ahead to the future that we can control and influence. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your fantastic questions. Absolutely love this connection with so many people across the world. So it's been a brilliant one today. Thank you so much. And Joshua, my greatest thanks to you. It was been brilliant. Thank you. All right, we'll sign off now, and we'll answer all the questions that have come through, and we'll be in touch. So thank you, everybody.